You trip on a curb in front of a coffee shop, and for the rest of the day, you are convinced that every single person in that shop remembers your face. They do not. Statistically, most of them looked up for less than a second and forgot you existed by the time they reached the counter. And here's the weird part. You already sort of know this. If you saw a stranger trip on a curb yesterday, could you describe their face right now? Probably not. Yet the part of your brain running your own life refuses to apply that same logic to you. This is not a confidence problem. It is not a self-esteem problem. It is a wiring problem, and it has a name. In 2000, psychologist Thomas Gilovich, along with Victoria Medvesh and Kenneth Savitsky, published a study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology that put this exact feeling under a microscope. They had college students put on a t-shirt featuring an image the students found embarrassing, walk into a room full of strangers, sit through a short interaction, and then guess how many people in that room would remember what was on the shirt. Participants guessed that around 46% of people would notice and remember. The actual number was 23%, not close, not roughly right. They called it the spotlight effect, and it is one of the more reliably repeated findings in the field, which honestly makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because every one of us is standing in the exact center of our own experience. All day, every day, you have never once seen the world through anyone else's eyes. You are always the main character of your own footage. So when something goes slightly wrong, a tripped curb, a weird laugh, a typo in a group email, your brain assumes everyone else is watching the same footage you are. They are not. They are the main character of their own footage, which means they are far too busy worrying about their own weird laugh to catalog yours. But there is a second reason that one tripped curb outlasts 100 ordinary steps in your memory, and it has nothing to do with audience size. In 2001, psychologist Roy Baumeister, along with Ellen Bratzlavsky, Katrin Finkenauer, and Kathleen Vose, published a review in Review of General Psychology titled "Bad is Stronger Than Good." Across an enormous range of psychological research, from relationships to memory to first impressions, they found the same pattern again and again. Negative events are processed more thoroughly, remembered longer, and weighted more heavily than positive ones of equal size. Not because you are pessimistic, because a brain that flags danger fast and holds onto it survives better than a brain that shrugs it off. So the one moment you embarrassed yourself does not just feel bigger than the 100 moments you did not. It is neurologically built to feel bigger. Your memory is not lying to you about the size of the event. It is applying an ancient weighting system that was never calibrated for a curb and a coffee shop. It was calibrated for actual threats. Now this is where it gets interesting, because none of this is a flaw. It is a leftover setting from a completely different operating environment. For most of human history, our ancestors did not live in cities of millions of anonymous strangers. According to anthropologist Robin Dunbar's research on group size, ancestral human communities appear to have functioned at a scale of roughly 150 people, a figure now widely known as Dunbar's number. In a group that size, everyone actually did know your business. If you embarrassed yourself in front of the tribe, it was not statistically likely that nobody noticed. Everybody noticed, because there were only 150 people, and you saw most of them daily, and in that world, being noticed for the wrong reasons was not a mild social discomfort. It could threaten your place in the group entirely. Researchers studying the psychology of ostracism, including work by Kerr and Levine in 2008, have argued that humans likely evolved a detection system specifically built to catch the earliest possible signs of social exclusion, because in a small interdependent tribe, losing your standing with the group could mean losing access to food, protection, and mates. The system did not need to be accurate. It needed to be fast. A hypersensitive alarm that occasionally cries wolf is a much better survival tool than a calm, careful alarm that occasionally misses a real threat. Stick with me here, because this is the part that reframes everything. Your brain still runs that same hypersensitive alarm today, but the group size did not stay at 150. It exploded. You now pass, interact with, and get observed by more strangers in a single afternoon than your ancestors would have encountered in years. The alarm never got the memo. It is still running Tribe of 150 software on a City of Millions operating system, and no update has ever been pushed. That mismatch is the entire explanation. It is not that you are uniquely self-conscious. It is that a system built for constant, high-stakes surveillance by a small permanent group is now running inside an environment of endless, low-stakes, forgettable strangers, and it cannot tell the difference. There is a third layer to this too, one that goes beyond just being seen. Illusion of transparency research, also from Gilovich's lab, found that people consistently overestimate how visible their internal emotional states are to others. You feel nervous, and you assume it is written all over your face. Usually it is not. Your inner experience is loud to you and nearly silent to everyone else. And no, that is not a metaphor for anything deeper. It is a literal, measurable gap between what you feel and what actually reaches another person's face. Now, here is a piece of this puzzle that explains why some people feel this more intensely than others. In 1975, psychologists Alan Feinstein, Michael Shire, and Arnold Buss at the University of Texas at Austin published the Self-Consciousness Scale, a 23-item measure that splits self-focus into two distinct channels. Private self-consciousness is attention turned toward your own inner thoughts and feelings, the stuff nobody else can see. Public self-consciousness is attention turned toward yourself as a social object, how you appear, how you are being read by a room. Their research found these two channels are only moderately related, meaning someone can be highly attuned to their own inner world without being especially worried about how others perceive them, or the reverse. People high in public self-consciousness are not weaker or more insecure. Their attention is simply calibrated to run the audience monitoring channel at a higher default volume, which explains why two people can trip on the exact same curb and walk away with two completely different internal reports. One forgets it in 10 seconds. The other is replaying it at midnight. Same event, different dial setting on a trait that has existed in the population measurably since before either of them was born. Here is where the ancient alarm and modern life collide most directly. Researchers studying online self-presentation have found that people feel more pressure to curate and perform when their audience is made up of strangers rather than people who actually know them offline. That tracks perfectly with everything we just covered. A feed full of unfamiliar faces looks, to the alarm system inside your skull, exactly like a tribe of thousands watching your every move, even though the overwhelming majority of that audience will never register you existed. The platform changed. The alarm did not, so the next time you replay something small, a comment that landed wrong, an outfit you second-guessed, a laugh that came out too loud, run the math instead of the panic. Cut your estimate of how many people noticed by roughly half, because that is what the actual research says happens almost every time. Remember that the moment feels enormous, partly because your memory is built to overweight anything that felt even slightly bad, not because it actually was enormous, and even the people who did notice were probably back to thinking about their own life within about 4 seconds. Here is the reframe, and it is a genuinely good one. You are not the villain of a story everyone else is watching closely. You are barely a background character in most of the stories playing out around you, the same way they are barely a background character in yours. That is not a sad thought, it is a freeing one. The spotlight you feel burning on you was never actually plugged in. Nobody has been running the show you thought they were watching, which means you get to stop performing for an audience that, statistically speaking, checked out a long time ago.